In Consumer Corner, we take a look at trends and products creating a buzz here in China. On today's show, we're talking about the increasing number of Chinese who are making an investment out of their child's overseas education. The drive to find reliable investments is the force behind many miniature bubbles throughout the Chinese economy. The Chinese stock market remains immature, capital markets are just getting started, and bank deposits simply aren't worth the time of most investors. In the past decade, Chinese investors have turned to everything from artwork to alcohol, housing to jade in attempts to find products that preserve value and earn a return. But in recent years, many Chinese have begun to think outside the box and turn to a much more multifaceted type of investment: overseas study for their children. The trend has led to the coining of a new term, 中国式留学投资, Chinese-style investment in study abroad. The hope is that sending a child to study on Western campuses guarantees a high income that will be shared by the family. It also opens the door to immigration for several members of the family, all of whom may have to pitch in for the project. American students may choose to take a year abroad on a whim, but for Chinese families, the move represents a massive investment of resources. In the past, studying abroad was reserved for fabulously wealthy Chinese families, but with rising incomes and a shift in priorities, the door to study abroad has been opened a little wider. For middle-class families, sending one child abroad for undergraduate study often requires an entire extended family to pool its resources. Statistics from the Educational International Cooperation Group show that families with under 300,000 yuan or $50,000 in income account for 52% of students studying abroad. Those are China's upper middle class, verging on rich even, but for them, one student's tuition eats up more than 2/3 of annual income. Foreign students are often forced to pay full tuition at Western universities, meaning they have to fork over 200 to 250,000 yuan. But Chinese parents are increasingly willing to scrape and surrender the family savings for a chance to plant their child abroad. The Chongqing Economic Times reported on the struggle of one middle-class family that wanted to send their son to school in America. The couple was forced to sell their apartment just for a proof of bank deposits for an American visa. After that, the parents sold their only car to fund tuition, and they were finally forced to take out bank loans, an uncommon and difficult move in China. That desperation has manifested itself in record-breaking numbers of Chinese students on American campuses. In 2011, China sent almost 340,000 students to the U.S., making Chinese students the largest group of foreign students. Experts predict this number will surpass 400,000 next year. But as the study abroad industry heats up, the investment is becoming less and less of a sure thing. With the supply far exceeding the demand, students who return to China after studying abroad are no longer the scarce resource they once were. A report released by Education International Cooperation Group shows over 70% of Chinese students who studied abroad have chosen to return to China. Of these, 40% only earn a monthly income of 3,000 yuan to 5,000 yuan, placing them well within the average earnings of domestic graduates. Making matters worse, some students say they've been cheated by overseas institutions or middlemen who took their tuition but offered worthless accreditation. Netizens have been talking up this trend on forums and microblogs. One user, Fan Fan Ha, wrote, "Funding study abroad is like making a high-risk investment. The student's own career and the family's future happiness is on the line. But this educational investment is no different from those deceptive financial management products. The promised rate of return is seductive, but in the end it can't live up to people's hopes." Another netizen felt it was absolutely not necessary for students to seek an education abroad. Dao Dao Xue wrote, "Parents who tighten their belts to send students abroad are dreaming. Nowadays, overseas diplomas aren't worth what they used to be. It's common for overseas returnees to end up at home and fun employed." Other posters point to the deeper roots behind the investment boom. One commenter wrote, "Chinese investment in overseas education reflects a lack of confidence in our own national culture. Is it true that the foreign moon is rounder and brighter than the local one? We need to do some deep thinking about our current education system." Another poster did some of that thinking and pointed the finger at China's focus on tests. They wrote, "Exam-oriented education should be blamed for people flocking to overseas education. Poor economic growth only destroys one generation, but 3 generations are ruined if education fails to deliver. The most important thing is to retain talents through our own education system. In the end, we're going to need to draw water from our own well." Part family investment and part crisis of confidence, China's boom in overseas education is spawning cottage industries in both mainland China and the U.S. With overseas education coming within reach for more and more families, we can expect the stream of students leaving the country to continue growing with time.